IVM.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawala, a life coach, a business mentor, and a motivational speaker. I tackle the challenges that come with varied work cultures, and I try to give out some cheat codes for loving your job in the second season of the empowering series with me, Zarina. This show will feature live sessions with me and a participant, most likely to be an entrepreneur, a startup founder, an employee, a recruiter, or just about anyone who strives to love their job and looks forward to bringing in a positive shift at their workplace. On today's episode, I have this quirky, eclectic market researcher, an avid traveler, and the host, rather the co-host with me on the podcast in general, of the Postcards from Nowhere. So please welcome Utsav Mamoria.
Hi guys, happy to be on the show.
I'm really happy to have you on the show because I've not had anybody discussing travel at length with me in general.
Right.
And we've had co-hosts with different topics, and of course we have a lot of common things to discuss. But you know, traveling is something everybody wants to talk about.
Right.
And I'm guessing that you, being an avid traveler, have lots of stories to tell.
Sure.
Right, Utsav? So let's begin with, how did you actually begin your travel, what do you say, expedition?
Okay.
How did you start your travel expeditions?
I think like every good kid born in the 80s, growing up in the 90s, the first idea of travel was also always trains.
Right.
Right. And I had family up north and I was living in Gujarat. So going to your Nani's place for the summer vacations was the only form of travel I knew until a very long time in my life.
Right.
And I think that also sort of is a very nostalgic feeling because today I'm fortunate and privileged enough to see so many parts of the world. But that innocence of or pureness of that travel, of anticipating something for 1 year and getting onto the train and getting to another place. And even just the fact that you could stand on the platform and hear about places you have never even thought about. You know, about Chennai and Ernakulam and, you know, Srinagar and all these places. And you'd wonder that, you know, oh my God, this world is so amazing.
It is, right?
Right. And I think that's where it really started somewhere. And maybe because I grew up in a small town, I was very, very excited to see the world because I had such limited exposure growing up. And I think once I started working is sort of when I realized that I really enjoy it. I really enjoy going to places, seeing people, cultures, understanding why do people do the things they do. I think that the fundamental thing which sort of defines my worldview is curiosity. Okay. I think that also why I became a market researcher, because it helps me understand people, consumers, their behavior. Right. And it's a great way if you actually like what you do and helps you make a living. And it also translates into travel and the fact that I really like reading a lot because it also is a way to satisfy curiosity.
It is.
So I think, travel just became a great extension to satisfy that innate curiosity about the world around me. And that's how I started to travel.
So actually, Utsav, the thing is, people are curious, but you know how we have curiosity around us? It grows in the form of gossip.
Right.
Grapevining.
Right.
So I like the fact that you've channelized your curiosity over the couple of years.
Right.
And used it in the right direction.
Oh,
you know?
Okay.
I mean,
never thought of it that way, actually. Thank you.
Well, that's the coach in me giving you
I got coached in the first 3 minutes of this podcast.
Well,
you know,
that's
I'm
not
dealing
bad.
with a professional now.
No, well, I mean, you know, people look at curiosity in a very different manner. Oh, you know, you're such a curious person. And
Correct.
That means that you're very panchat by nature.
Correct.
But using that and channelizing that in the way you mentioned, because you didn't just mention travel. You also mentioned books. And I believe you also have this love for food.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow. So you've got the 3 things that most people always talk about covered and probably paying you for it.
Yeah, true.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What does it tell you about passion? I mean, what is your take on passion? Because usually when you're talking about these 3 particular things, you know, in life, you come across people, you ask them, what is it that you love or interests you, hobbies? What's your passion? I love travel.
Right.
Or I love food. Or I love reading.
Correct.
Maybe they say it, but we don't know how much one means it. So
True.
What's your take on passion? And
So one of the things I always talk about, and I tell very recently I used to teach at Mumbai University. And, you know, one of the things which, you know, students come to say is that, sir, you know, I can clearly see you love your subject, but I don't know what my passion is. I want to find my passion.
True.
And I think finding your passion is one of the most bullshit pieces of advice that can be given.
Right.
Because people believe that, you're sitting at your home one day or you're sitting in college and suddenly something will strike you and that becomes your passion. Unless you are really from a place, suppose you come from a family which is into music or into art, I can understand if that develops as your passion. But most of us stumble into what we do and that becomes our passion. Passion is something which you can make as much as it makes you. Right? So, you can try a whole bunch of things and some of them will not stick. Some of them you will realize you shouldn't be doing. In fact, that also is great learning in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what you don't want to do is equally important. Like I stumbled into market research in a very, very weird way. For example, I started off wanting to become a journalist, but then realized there is no career option zyada. So then I went and did engineering. I hated it. Then in the third year of my engineering, I became a freelance journalist for a newspaper, writing for the city supplement. I enjoyed it. Then got me into media. That got me into this business side of media. So I went and did a master's from this place in Ahmedabad called MICA.
Okay. And you went to MICA.
Yes. And there I discovered that, I could do research around media and people's media consumption habits and stuff like that. That's how I got into research. And then I've gone to do a whole bunch of things. Now there is no proper pattern to it. Or there's no proper part to it. I just stumbled into one thing or the other. The only difference is I was open to trying new things.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I think so. When people say I'm passionate about something, I would look at two things. One is that have you spent enough time with it, right? If it indeed was your passion, it would not go away in 3 months.
That's a hobby.
It's a hobby. It's an interest, which is fine. You could have tons of fleeting interests in life. But to genuinely call something your passion, and I think this also brings me to another thought which I've always had frequently in my head, is this idea of, how important talent or potential is, right? And I genuinely feel that it is one of the most overrated things. Because the most successful people are the most talented people. They are the people who persevere the most.
Yes.
Right? And I think the same thing goes with passion. You have to persevere towards something. Right? And Zarina, we both are running a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Now, if someone asks me, oh my God, you launched a podcast. I'm like, trust me, that's the easiest part. To keep it going. Week on week.
The content, creating
it, making sure you are doing justice to your audience, making sure you're making it worth their time.
Right.
Is what makes it better. You have to persevere with it, right? Nobody's an overnight success.
Definitely.
Correct, right? Tomorrow, if let's talk about Cyrus on this, right? Cyrus is 450 episodes plus, but he's bloody consistent. He gets up every week, he comes down and talks.
Yeah.
How many people can do that? Not many people can do that.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
Yeah. It just seems like, you're going there and having a chat and that's about it. And we have some very nice and expert technical people around us.
Yes, they are also smirking at us. I don't know why they are smirking.
Yeah, because they know they're getting a little bit of appreciation and validation. So they make it all sound really nice and professional. But most people think, podcast? What are you doing? Achha, conversation.
Na? जाके record करके आ गए. मतलब ऐसा नहीं होता है. So,
exactly. No, but when you spoke about passion, there's something I'd add to that. Utsav, passion is something that you can also develop.
Absolutely.
If you work on your skill set.
Absolutely.
So there are a lot of people, for instance, when you're younger and your parent has put you in a ballet class or a dance class and you hated it in the beginning, but then eventually you started loving it so much that it became your passion. Now you want to be a ballet dancer, you want to start a ballet school.
Yeah.
Things like that can happen with people, right?
Correct.
So it's not quite necessary. I think we stereotype our words too much. Matlab, passion is just something that it's not true. Sometimes these skills can be developed. Just like you said for talent, all of this needs to be persevered and probably a little sprinkle of discipline.
Of course. So I think perseverance really takes care of that.
Yes,
right? You have to
does.
be disciplined.
Yeah.
And one amazing thing which you said that, if you keep at it, you'll become good at it, right? One of the things I was reading is, I don't know if it was New York Times or the New Yorker. It talks about that you have to tell yourself your own life narrative. You shape your identity by the words you tell yourself.
Right.
So today, if I'm saying that I'm a traveler, I'm a market researcher, now that's the identity I shape for myself, and slowly my actions also start going in that direction.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think if you're saying that, music is your passion, just give yourself time with music, or whether it's art or it's writing, whatever it is. But if you keep giving time, you will get better. It also works as an sort of an internal validation mechanism.
Yes.
Right? So like today I'm recording a podcast, right? And I do 50 episodes and all 50 of them turn out to be duds. I'll be like, maybe this is not my thing. But I get validation from listeners, my listenership numbers growing, people keep writing to me with feedback, good, bad, everything. I also start becoming, podcasting is my thing. I really like doing it.
Right.
So I think it's also a function of what we tell ourselves.
A lot of it.
I think, probably.
A lot of it, you're right. But when it comes to going back to your 3 areas that you've kind of developed into a profession, let's say, even passion if you want to.
Right.
So if it's safe to say that traveling, food and reading, okay, that kind of sums you up in terms of what you love to do?
Fairly, yes.
Yeah? How did you make sure that you explore these opportunities? Because a lot of people use these words, like let's say passion, it's the strongest of your interest or hobbies. Okay? So we're talking about the intensity there. But the fact is that we always say, oh, I love doing this, but I don't have the time for it.
Right.
And I love travel, but it's not in my budget. Or So various things like that. When you even say that you love something, you don't want to do it.
Right.
How do you manage to
I think
deal with that?
it's again it comes down to a question of priorities.
Right.
So, for example, just before this, I was on IVM Likes, right? And they're talking about, why don't you talk us about travel films? I'm like, I watch very few films because I spend so much of my time reading. Now, despite the advent of an Amazon Prime or a Netflix, I have still chosen to spend most of my time with books vis-a-vis binge watching something. There's nothing wrong or right about it. It's just a priority for me, right?
Sure.
So the moment you start prioritizing A over B is when you will actually become passionate or good at it. The other way to look at also is that try not to have this sort of FOMO that, oh my God, everyone is talking about this show. I have to watch this show. No, if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it.
Yes.
You don't have to be the star of every party conversation. It's okay. Just listen. Let people talk about Game of Thrones or whatever they're watching these days.
By the way, have you watched it?
No, I've not watched Game of Thrones.
It's overrated. According to me.
The disclaimer was almost like, ये दोनों studio में मार तो नहीं देंगे मुझे.
Exactly. I mean, there are people who have this conversation, like you mentioned, Game of Thrones, just kind of picking on that word. Till about the season 6 and 7, everybody was raging about this show,
Right.
So you don't have an option. And you wanted to watch it. You enjoyed it also to some extent. But I always used to tell everybody I met it's very overrated. And they're like, please don't say this in public.
Yeah.
I'm going on to say it on a podcast on record, which is pretty bold of me, I'd say, right now at this point.
I hope people don't know where you live. I'm really hoping for that.
Yeah, well, I hope so too.
Actually, after the way it ended, apparently, which was very disappointing for people, I think people will still be okay. Yeah, it wasn't that great. The end was horrible.
I know. I've heard that. But yeah, just steering away from the conversation.
Right.
Going back to what you were talking about. So, yes, you don't have to be the center of,
Correct.
Party
so
and
you
just
have to really start
talk.
prioritizing of what you really want to do. Right? So, for example, when it comes to traveling, right? Now, I have a full-time job, like I'm assuming most of our listeners would, right? But I took a 3-month sabbatical last year just so that I could travel and write. Right? Now that made it a priority, which means that not only did I save up money, cut on useless expenses, right? I also spoke to my organization in a over the long period of time that this is something I want to do and we'll work out a time which works for everyone.
Right.
So I made it a priority for about a year and a half, where I could plan everything, which culminated into me taking that sabbatical.
Wow.
Right? Now, people would come and tell me that, oh, are you sure, taking time off and you're doing very well in your career, it'll take you a step back, this and that. But one of my friends very beautifully told this that, yaar, kya hoga? VP nahi to AVP mar jaoge. Right? But what is the point? If the corporate ladder is not what you want to climb and chase, and let's face it, I will remember those 3 months of my sabbatical much better than the 3 months I would have worked in the office.
Right.
Because this is lifelong memory now for me.
That is so true.
Right. So my question is, I prioritized my travel over other things. Right? Maybe I could have done better in my career. But the fact is I'm more satisfied right now having taken that sabbatical, having written my book, vis-a-vis taking that 3 months of work and making that money.
Right. So how was that journey from going corporate into the wilderness of travel?
It was because I think... I knew it was not the rest of my life, right? I knew that this is going to be a 3-month phase and I'm going to go back to the exact same life.
Right.
So I think that tempering of expectation or setting of expectations internally was very important. It was also liberating in a lot of ways for the simple reason that I could literally do whatever I wanted.
Right.
Right. So, of course, I traveled for the most part of it.
Tell us where all you traveled also.
So, I went, the first month I spent in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Oh, lovely.
And then I spent a month in a one-room cottage in the Himalayas.
All of this is solo?
Solo. And the last 1 month I spent in Armenia and Georgia. Yeah.
Georgia, Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's former Russian, former
right?
USSR.
That part of
okay. Central Asia.
Yes, right.
So that's where I went, and I picked these places because, well, I wanted to go, and, well, they were cheap. And I think they had very interesting stories and histories. So,
right.
And I wanted to try this thing of, living by myself for 1 month in a very simple, basic cottage in the mountains and see how does that feel. Because I was like, do I have the courage to be alone by myself for 1 month without, being around people I know?
And did you have encouraging people around you or people supportive of this decision?
Very, very. In fact, most of my friends were super kicked about it. My family has been very, very supportive.
That's lovely.
And in fact, I got engaged between my sabbatical.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Are you married also?
Yeah, I'm already married. It's going to be a year now.
Bigger congratulations.
Thank you. And I was literally doing some sort of a really long distance with my fiance. Like, we're talking on the phone every day in different time zones and stuff. Right, so very, very supportive people around me, and I think that's a blessing in itself to have people who are supportive of you. And yeah, it was a great experience that way.
But I like the choice of places. They're quite interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, cheap, but they're still, the places which are slightly less explored or seem very off when you listen to them. For instance, all these places like Prague and Croatia only became famous after we watched a movie or two.
Yeah, sure.
So before that, it's not like people made the effort of going to these places, right? Except for
I think there's also a thought which I read in one of the books which says that what you find exotic abroad is what you miss at home. Right? Think of it, the people who come to India and they're fascinated by the amount of colors and the noise we have because they come from very pristine, silent, monochrome kind of settings.
Very serene and surreal.
Right? So they find this whole burst of colors and noise and chaos great. As Indians, when we go abroad, we find the whole structure of things and things working on time and efficiently very fascinating because you're not used to it. Right? So I think that also shows what the kind of places we end up picking.
Yeah.
I think I picked up maybe the Himalayas, apart from the fact that I love mountains, is the fact that peace and quiet and silence is so difficult to find in urban living.
It is.
Right?
It is, yeah.
And I think the more difficult part is to even be at peace with your own thoughts, and sort of really think through things with a clear mind when you're not sort of cluttered by a whole bunch of other things or other priorities which are always on your head in the way we live in urban India. So maybe that's why probably I picked, the Himalayas. I think Bosnia and Herzegovina I picked because I always felt that it's very important to remind yourself of your privileges.
Yes.
Of people who have survived horrible wars, genocide, and still live a regular life without complaining. And I sort of felt that my issues are literally beyond first world. They are first of the first world issues I have.
But that is very true because specifically Bosnia, it has suffered, and in fact it comes in the 10 poorest countries of Europe because of they have a lot, they're rich in terms of certain resources, but it's unutilized since the wars. You're right.
Since the wars, yeah. Right, and I think one thing which also teaches you to be very, very humble because to all the poorest places I've been to, the people have been so giving and so considerate of another human being. I think because you tend to forget that you're privileged. Because you always feel that, this person can take care of themselves. But when you are not privileged, you realize that how difficult day-to-day life can be and how important it is for people to have a sense of community, to reach out to each other, to be there for each other when they need, whether it's monetary, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, in any way.
Right.
I think that also gives you a very sobering perspective to how well you are doing in life.
I agree. It kind of grounds you in a way.
Yes.
But also, considering that it sobers you down, how does it change you as a person? Do you think it changes you as a person?
I think it does change me in some ways. Like, I think I've become a lot more empathetic after all my travels.
Okay.
Right? I think probably when I was young, I found it very easy to judge people. I find it very difficult to judge people now in a lot of ways. Because, it's so easy to laugh at someone's behavior or someone's habit without knowing the context of why they're doing it. Right?
Yes.
It's like you see this, it's like seeing through a peephole, right? You can see one part of the house, but you're not seeing what's happening around in the house.
Right.
It's the same thing with any person, right? You only see that slice of their life.
Right.
Right? Like, for example, we're talking right now. I only know of you, Zarina, as the podcaster on the Empowering series.
Yeah.
Right? You only know me as someone who's a traveler and a market researcher. But there are so many aspects to our lives which we will never know of.
Yeah.
Right? I think it makes you more empathetic for sure. The other thing it also makes you is it tells you how fleeting life is.
Right.
And the challenges which come with every age you go through, every life stage you go through. I think having met so many older people on my travels, whether I was staying at their house or they met them on the road, I think I also understood how difficult getting old can be.
Right.
Yeah. And I was just reading this book a few months ago. It's called Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. He's a doctor, and he talks about finding the most important thing for an old person is not money, is not so much even companionship, but it is finding purpose.
That is true.
Right? And so many people who retire, who have done so well in their life, suddenly find themselves purposeless.
Yes.
Which is why grandparents take to kids so fast, because they find such an amazing purpose in them.
Yes.
Right? So I think it really, really molds you as a person in terms of, you just are kinder to people, I think.
Yeah.
You
just kind of become more sensitive, more compassionate.
Compassionate, and you don't want to jump on to conclusions and sort of box people into type A, type B, type C, and less stereotypes also, I think.
Right.
Also busts a lot of stereotypes.
It does, right? Because when you're traveling, so for me, traveling has been a large part of my life from a younger age. And at a point, it was just the fascination of sitting in an airplane. And that changed into actually seeing places. The excitement of packing your bags and going to the airport. I think when you're younger and somebody from the family is traveling, you want to sit in their bags and go with them.
True.
So when you grow up a little bit and you start moving around, you just find it exciting.
True.
One thing I've realized when you're traveling is that you just feel like a little speck in this universe. You literally feel like nothing. No matter how well known you are, how reputed you are, or what you're doing with your life, in terms of fame or success, or in terms of just the kind of achievements or accomplishments one might have back home.
Yeah.
When you're out there, you're
very
just another. You're so insignificant, and you realize that this is life. This is who you're supposed to be. This is how you can adapt to people around you.
Yeah. Actually, just a thought came to my head. You suddenly start realizing that if I strip off all my worldly possessions and achievements, this is at the core of who I am.
Correct.
Right? Because when you're interacting with that person, he doesn't or she doesn't know that I am ABC in my country.
Sure.
He knows that, okay, I'm this guy from India who's traveling. That's all probably knows about me. Right? And the kind of conversations then you have with people are, I think, far more illuminating because they're all devoid of our insecurities and of our pride of, letting know of our weaknesses. I think you have much better conversations then. You
have better conversations, and the fact that you really do understand that there is a lack of judgment. And so you can just bear yourself as you are in that moment. You don't have to worry about what people are thinking about you.
Correct.
Because nobody knows you to think anything about you.
And that anonymity of self is very empowering, I think.
Yes, I think that is very empowering.
It's
You're
very
right.
Empowering, yeah.
But as much as I've traveled, I've only realized this one thing. Every time I've traveled, I've come back with this one lesson. That, the universe is really large, and you're literally nothing. You're literally just something so tiny that you can just wander around, travel around the world and go back home. Now, on that note, I want to ask you something that I have been questioning, so out of curiosity. Channelize in the right way, like we mentioned earlier. You're traveling the world and then you keep coming back to your country. How do you feel about your country when you come back?
Oh, it gives me actually a great appreciation of my own country.
It does, right?
It does,
okay, thank God.
I just feel so blessed to be in India, first of all. And it can be the most mundane things and can be the most esoteric thing. I'll give you an example. So, the fact, and I'm going to sound super shitty saying this, but I'm still going to say it. The fact that you have the privilege of having domestic help to do your chores. Makes life so easy. You cannot get it in most parts of the Western world. You can't afford it in the first place.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. But even the fact that within Bombay, the diversity of people, languages, cuisines I can see within a 5 square mile radius is almost impossible to find any part of the world.
I completely second that. Completely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that just tells me, I've been ignoring this fantastic country where I have all the rights to, and I don't need to get a visa, and I can travel on my own salary without having to worry about how much food costs X place.
Yeah.
And I've been ignoring it all along. And they just feel so stupid. And I'm like, people die to come to here, and I'm sitting here and not doing it. It's you don't appreciate your own thing, right? Ghar ki murgi dal barabar is what you say, right?
Bilkul. That's the case.
Yeah.
That's the case because I meet so many people and they haven't seen the Taj Mahal. Have you seen the Taj Mahal?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's nice. Have you seen the Taj Mahal? Go see it.
Yes.
You have? Okay, that's awesome because I actually know so many Indians who have not seen the Taj Mahal.
True.
And all I'm saying is before you get out, to see the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly,
there you go. Everyone wants to see the Eiffel Tower, which is great. I mean, go ahead and see that too.
Right.
But you have stuff back home if you feel like you need to be on a budget, etc.
True.
What's your take on a budget travel?
Oh, so budget travel is the only way I know to travel. Mm-hmm. Because
only way you know to travel.
Because I remember that we were on a honeymoon. We went to Jordan, and for one night we thought we'll fancy it up, so we booked the Marriott.
Okay.
For one night. Okay. At the same time, I wanted to go and live in a Bedouin camp.
Right.
Because I was like, I just want to get a sense of what is the whole Bedouin culture about. And my wife had a slightly different take. She was like, I think she said, I think I'll enjoy the Marriott more. Mm-hmm. Right. And when we ended up doing both of them, the hospitality of the Bedouin camp was head and shoulders above what we found in the Marriott.
Are you serious?
Right.
Wow.
And to the point that in the middle of the desert, they knew it was a honeymoon. They drove 25 kilometers into the city, got us a cake back to the Bedouin camp.
How beautiful.
Right. Yeah. And in the camp, there was a pathway and they lit it up with sand candles so that we could just walk and cut the cake. You can't get that in a Marriott. You cannot. Right, and I think that was something which was very, very memorable for me.
Very special.
And it cost me maybe a quarter of what it costed me to stay in the Marriott there. Right, so yeah, big fan of budget travel, and pretty much most parts of the world can be budget travel, unless of course you go to the very remote parts, which are very expensive to get to. For example, India, you can pretty much budget travel anywhere. Like I went to Meghalaya and I think I spent 15,000 rupees over some 6 days or something.
That's it?
That's it. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, I got a super cheap flight. Of course, I booked everything a lot in advance.
Did you see the Root Bridge?
Of course, I went down to the Root Bridges. I stayed in the village for one night.
That is something I'm very fascinated by. I really want to see it.
Yeah, so I would suggest that anyone who's looking to go to the living Root Bridges, make sure you stay one night at a homestay at the Root Bridges because it's 2,000 steps down from Cherrapunji.
Oh.
So, while you can, of course, go down and come up in the same day.
Right.
But unless you're in a hurry, I would say just stay there because in the next morning, you can be the first person at the Root Bridges before anyone has even started their descent.
That is so fascinating.
It's fascinating. And if you go further from the Root Bridges, it's about 2 hours of further walking. There is something called the Rainbow Falls.
Okay.
Where there's 7 waterfalls and you can see a rainbow pretty much any time of the year. Right, and you can get that experience for maybe 400 rupees in a day, the entire thing. So yes, traveling doesn't have to be expensive. Seeing beautiful places which will blow your mind doesn't have to be expensive. You just need to be a little more open to going to places which you haven't thought of.
And how does one manage, because you obviously are a market researcher.
Yeah.
You are a working individual, right? A professional.
Right.
So naturally, it's not very possible for one to keep moving out and travel every now and then.
True.
If it is possible, how does one make it happen?
So my sense is, if you are working at the beginning of the year, you would get a list of all your long weekends. Right? First of all, book tickets on those long weekends.
Yeah.
Right?
Early bookings really make a difference.
Makes a massive difference.
Yes.
Like you can get stuff for really cheap. And second, if you're taking flights, if you're willing to not have check-in luggage, you can get on an Air Asia flight for really cheap because check-in luggage actually costs you more.
Right.
Simple things like this. Be willing to take trains, willing to do public transport. And other way to do it also is that if you travel for work, try and club some of your work travel with some leisure travel. Suppose if you're going to, like, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to a city, just take Thursday, Friday off and you get the whole week to yourself. So at least you get 4-5 days and your airfare is already paid for by your company. So that becomes a cheap trip.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Wow. Because initially when I traveled India for work, that's how I saw most of India.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And that was my solo traveling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't have an answer to that question earlier. But most of my traveling for work has always been solo.
Right.
And then I've explored places.
Right.
Whether it is Bandipur or, just... going out and seeing even Nizamuddin and all those little places around Delhi. Or I went to Pushkar and Ajmer when I was in Jaipur. So just by myself. That kind of travel I've done, yes. I just remembered the answer to the question I was asked earlier.
Correct. And the other thing also is that be a little open to traveling by yourself. You don't always need a companion. Because sometimes, your schedules will just not sync. Even your partners, your best friends, your family schedules will not sync with you.
Yes.
Right? So if you get a chance, just go.
The typical funny meme that I've seen in and around regarding all the friends who make Goa plans.
Oh yeah, never materialize.
Yes. So that actually brought me to think about, just leave your friends behind and go to Goa alone, that kind of a thing.
Correct. Like for example, I'm going to Italy for 2 weeks for my anniversary, right?
Right.
But I'm coming back, but my wife is taking a break from work. So she's just extending her trip and going 1 week solo. She wants to go to Spain. I said, it makes so much sense, right? Because, I can't come because I have to get back to work. You're taking a break from your work. Why don't use this time? You're not going to get this opportunity of not having to return to a job immediately.
Yes.
Again and again in life.
Yes.
Right? And you already have a visa. It's a multiple entry visa. You already have one-way tickets. You just need to move your ticket for about a week and rest of it's pretty much taken care of. Right, so jump at opportunities, things like this. If you keep waiting for planning that perfect vacation, it's never going to happen.
It isn't, right?
You're just putting too much pressure on yourself. And another thing is, don't try to make your vacations perfect. There's nothing called a perfect vacation.
And why should it be?
Yeah, and I think the most memorable of my travels have been times when things have gone wrong, when things have not gone as planned, because they just make for better memories.
They do. They're the ones which come to the mind quickest.
Yeah.
They're actually the ones which literally hit you there and you're like, hey, okay. Because this is what happened when we did like a friends trip.
Right.
So we went to Spain and Paris and Amsterdam, and then we were going to London for a wedding. Honestly, when we reached Paris, we didn't like it at all.
Okay.
And then we actually didn't like Paris, at all. And we were waiting for the hotel.
It's okay, Zarina, I believe you. There are a lot of people who don't like Paris. It's almost like, I know it's hard to convince you, but I'm telling you to
like because you have this straight face, like, really, Paris, you don't like. Do you like Paris?
I've never been there, but I'm going there actually now.
Yeah, so now you might be able to give me an answer to that. But we reached there, we didn't like the place at all. Then after that, for about few days, we had so many mishaps and stupid kind of chaotic moments that we actually land up remembering Paris the most from our trip. And it's funny, but it's true. It's just how it is. Give me something like that. You are a storyteller. You must have some such stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a atrocious sense of direction, like to the point that I can get lost in my own city. Okay, and I genuinely think that thanks to the advent of technology and maps, I have been able to travel.
Okay,
right? Like I can get lost. Like you tell me, अच्छा यहाँ से left जाना, फिर वहाँ से right लेके left निकल जाना. I was like, what? कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आया. I get lost with that much, right? And I have gotten lost a fair bit. But I once remember this was happening to me in Bosnia. Okay. And I was supposed to take a bus to a certain place, and the travel agency told me, हाँ Tuesday को 10 बजे बस जाती है. I'm like, ठीक है. पहुंच गए वहाँ जाके लोकल से पूछा, यहाँ तो कोई बस जाती नहीं है. I'm like, brilliant. Now there is nowhere to go. Okay. And you don't speak the language. Okay. There is not a soul around who speaks English.
Right.
Okay. And you have your phone, of course, and you check on your phone. Phone is like 40 kilometers. No transport available. I'm like, brilliant. No. I'm like, अब क्या करेंगे? ठीक है. And I think the only advantage I had was that I was there in the summer, so the day was longer.
Okay.
So I had a little more daylight, and daylight really helps in those situations. Right. And I hitchhiked. Right. For the first time in my life, I sort of put my thumb out and said, can someone give me a ride? And I'm not kidding. I changed 3 rides to get 40 kilometers, including 3 rides.
Okay.
Because it was a remote village I was going to. And the third guy actually took a 7-kilometer detour to drop me to my village, because he was like, looked at me and like, beta, tumse na ho paega. I think I need to drop you, otherwise you'll never get there. Right? So it was really, really weird at that point in time, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Right?
Yeah.
Right? But I think I sort of put myself out there, put my faith back in humanity, and I was home, safe and sound.
But somehow when you're traveling, you just find the right people in the right moment.
I think yes, and while I would never say that there can't be poor travel experiences, there definitely can be.
Of course.
But my sense is overwhelmingly most of them are positive. And we need to sort of shed this thing that, that people are out to get you. It's not the case. In most cases, people don't care about you. The world doesn't care about you. The world has its own thing to
we were
do.
talking about the insignificance.
Oh yeah, you are very insignificant, right? Really, just get off your high horse of thinking that
I'll just drop you 7 kilometers, please. Just get somewhere.
Just get somewhere, right?
That's the attitude.
So yeah, I think you sort of need to let that go and be more open to things.
Are you kind of a spontaneous traveler at any point, or usually are you? I mean, the pack your bag and go sorts, or you prefer the whole pre-planning bit?
So I'm somewhere in the middle in the sense that I pre-plan to make sure I have time to travel.
Okay.
I pre-plan leaves, I pre-plan work, I pre-plan tickets. But for example, my sabbatical, I literally landed up in Bosnia with my guidebook, which I'd read thoroughly by the time I reached there. And I had no plan. Apart from the first 3 nights which I booked in Sarajevo, I just took it along in that 1 month as I felt like. I was like, guidebook padhi, ye jagah interesting lag rahi, let's go here.
Acha.
Right, so that way I'm spontaneous. But in terms of making sure that, prioritizing time in life to be able to travel, I'm very, very planned that way.
That's pretty cool because I am only spontaneous.
For example, I just moved jobs and I've moved to Bangalore now. And one of the things I negotiated while I was negotiating my new job was that, I'm going to take 2 weeks off.
Okay.
Because it's my first anniversary. I'm not going to miss it for anything. So you guys should be okay with me working for a month and a half and then taking 2 weeks off.
Right.
Which most organizations may not be. But I work at a good organization, so they were quite okay with it.
Lucky you. Fortunate.
Yeah, fortunate enough.
Yeah.
So I think the prioritize for time, but then I sometimes just do what I want to do.
Yeah, I guess the kind of work culture or atmosphere really plays a role in that.
Yes.
Because that's where I can probably say that I have the privilege of saying something like that because I'm on my own.
True.
So, I remember when we just wanted to do Goa. Goa, the usual plans. Yes. But this was my husband and me. And it was just random. Raat ko we deciding, let's do Goa. Let's leave tomorrow.
Okay.
So we decided, let's do budget.
Okay.
So we went so budget that we decided to go by bus.
Oh, wow.
We went by bus.
So that's 14-15 hours
14-15 hours. And when we returned, it was about 16 hours.
Oh,
I think we watched 3 movies. I can tell you the names also in one go.
God.
And we actually remember the trip because it was so spontaneous and so last minute, and you just go like, okay, let's just make this happen. So
right.
I guess that is something that people who don't have to, right, of course, if you have your sessions and you're planning your date and agenda.
True.
Podcast hai, recording hai.
Right.
So batana padta hai, but in general, it's, I don't know, I should learn how to prioritize.
No, I think it's also the fact that what kind of a work structure you have.
Yeah, it matters.
That if you are employed in a company, just chance of being spontaneous comes down.
Yes.
Otherwise, you do shady stuff like suddenly putting 3 days of sick leave, clubbing it with the weekend. All of us have done that. All of us will continue to do it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, right. But I'm not saying go ahead and do it. But the thing is, then you're always, somewhere the back of it stressed about, if this gets caught, it's going to blow up on my face and it's going to get a lot of shit from my manager.
Yeah, so I guess it's not fun. It's a work culture that makes it possible. But you're a good combination of both. So literally, I'm telling you that I want you to at least help me plan the Meghalayas.
Oh, sure.
Because for sure, I want to see the root bridges in my life.
Yeah.
I've seen a whole documentary on it, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, you should see them. They're genuinely marvelous.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, you
man-made miracle.
Yeah. It's like you can hear about it and see about it as much as you want. But when you see them, you can sing those routes and walk on those routes.
Can you enlighten the audience and the listeners about the root bridges? Because so obviously even our producer is looking a little lost.
So the living root bridges are basically, bridges made from the roots of trees, right? And they don't have any other man-made material. So actually people from those villages have connected two sides of the land when the river is flowing below, just to the roots of the trees. It's been done over 200 years now. And it is in a way a great symbiotic relationship between man and nature. And at any point in time, those bridges can easily take the weight of 10 to 15 people walking on them. So they are quite strong. And you just need to take a flight to Guwahati, drive down to Shillong, and 3-4 hours you are in Cherrapunji, and walk down 2,000 steps and you are at Living Root Bridges.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to do, and if you have 4 days, you can actually do a rush trip. You shouldn't, but...
And they've intertwined the roots so well that they actually grow and they're just becoming... They'll only become stronger
now time. Because they almost are like glowing like a part of a tree now.
Yes, they're growing like a part of a tree. And
that's why they are called the living root bridges.
The living root bridges, like we talked about, it's important for people to actually go and see something like that simply because we are in that zone and that era of time where you have to understand how you can naturally create miracles and constructions
Absolutely.
like that.
And by the way, this is not you can see anywhere else in the entire world. This is only in Meghalaya in India. right? So you are sitting on, like, even given another example, there's a floating national park in Manipur.
Yes.
Right? Most Indians don't know about that, right? And I don't think there are so many floating national parks in the world. Just go there, right? And it's not difficult. I mean, we have flights to most of these places now. You can get there by 3-4 hours by road. And yeah, so a whole bunch of places you could go to.
Now you just made me very dreamy about it. Yeah, I really would like, Radhika and me will just probably leave this podcast and go to the Meghalayas. All right, talking about India. Now let's talk about some international trips that you really recommend to people on a budget.
So if you guys are living in Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai, or even Kerala, you have the entire Southeast Asia open to you. One cheap flight, AirAsia, Tiger Airways. Extremely cheap places, very beautiful places. You can do what you want. So definitely recommend. Most Thailand, no visa. Visa is free for Indians right now. Cambodia, no visa on arrival. Vietnam, e-visa. Whole bunch of places you could go to. Wouldn't cost you a bomb. You don't have to save too much for it. If you are being a little smart and not splurging money, of course.
Don't go shopping in Thailand, you'll be fine.
I wouldn't know about it because I've never been shopping in Thailand, but I will take Zarina's recommendation for it.
I have moderately, but I know that's where the money goes.
Money goes, right? And apart from Southeast Asia, you could also look at Central Asia. I think it's a very, very underrated part of the world. And there are direct flights 3 or 4 hours into Central Asia out of Delhi. So, Uzbekistan has moved to an e-visa. Tajikistan is an e-visa. And Tajikistan is I'm planning to go next year. I'm looking at going to Iran and Tajikistan.
Beautiful.
Two top places to go. And again, also look at some of these places, like I went to Jordan, right? Again, visa on arrival. Don't need to do much. Slightly more expensive maybe, so maybe not the most budget place to go. But again, not exorbitantly expensive.
But then again, it was your honeymoon, so it's fine.
So it's okay, yeah. Then Turkey is a fantastic place to go.
Right.
I would highly recommend it. I've just had a colleague who's come back from Turkey and it's perfectly fine to go. You don't have to worry about any turmoil or violence or anything. Right? You can go to Kenya actually. There's a direct flight by Kenya Airways out of Mumbai to Nairobi. From Nairobi, you can go overland into Tanzania. And Tanzania has this place called Zanzibar.
Yes.
Which is gorgeous beaches. Tanzania is, again, if I'm not wrong, visa on arrival for Indians. So you can go to Tanzania from there. Anything else, if I go and look apart, would become more expensive purely on the flight. So the Americas, whether it's South or North or Canada, would become expensive purely on the flight. Like one of the South American countries, I think it's Bolivia, has visa on arrival for Indians, but bloody getting to Bolivia is expensive.
Yes, it has visa on arrival for Indians.
Yeah, correct. Right, so that's there. Apart from that, Indonesia is a great country to go. Again, visa on arrival, and I went and hiked 2 active volcanoes there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It's completely safe,
Fancy.
by the way. I mean, of course, if you have really bad luck, then it's a different thing.
Listen, if you call it an active volcano, I don't know how many people will believe it's safe.
Trust me, the number of people who go there will tell you it's safe.
Yeah, I mean, just the sound of it.
Right, and if you are into diving, Indonesia has some of the best waters in the world to dive. Right, and if you, and the food's cheap, the people are nice, easy to get to. You just fly to, like I went to Calcutta and took a direct flight on AirAsia to Yogyakarta. Right, that's another town in Indonesia, and that cost me like 13,000 rupees return.
That's it?
Yeah,
wow.
AirAsia. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive, and so many places you could go. I could just go on for the next hour. So
Turkey, I have this fascination with Turkey recently, simply because I've been watching this Turkish show.
Okay.
It's called Dirilis Ertuğrul, and Ertuğrul is the founder of the Ottoman Empire.
Oh, okay.
So it's the history of Turkey.
Yeah.
So my whole idea of going to Turkey now is just to see the history of Turkey. It's beyond the hammam and the hot air balloons and all.
So by the way, you should listen to one of my episodes on Turkey. It's on the whirling dervishes.
Yeah.
And how my interest in Sufism led me to sort of explore that.
It's
already out. It's already out.
You
can just check it out on the IVM Podcast app.
But yeah, please tell me about this whole Davish thing.
So the whirling dervishes are, of course, belong to the Sufi sect of Islam, right?
Yes.
And the way they move and they move the dance is the way of meditation for them, where they sort of connect with the larger creator.
Right.
And the idea is that, you sort of, your hands are in such a way that one hand faces the heavens and the other faces the earth. So you take the blessings of the heavens and pass it on to the earth. And what I found fascinating about it is the fact that they could just go on whirling for half an hour. And you did not lose balance, you did not lose composure, you did not bang into each other.
Yeah.
And you have to be in a state of a trance to be able to do that. Right? Now, I am not a religious person. Right? But that made me question that, there are things about this world which are beyond me and I don't understand. Right? So that sort of also gives you a very interesting perspective on how the world is and how little of the world around you understand.
That's so true. Yeah. Back to the being insignificant.
Yeah, being insignificant, correct. This is the constant theme in this podcast now.
It's a constant theme. It's just become so constant. But this whole thing about Darwishism, Sufism, it's kind of elaborated when you watch the show. And the show is about, like I said, the founder of the Ottoman Empire. And that guy has... So Sogut is a place in Turkey where you only have graves. There's nothing else. But it's barren, and his tomb is specifically, properly made. It's like going to the Taj Mahal here. People there.
Yeah.
So I am very fascinated with that part of Turkey, and I'm hoping to see that someday. I haven't been to Turkey. Only the airport.
You should.
Only the
airport. It doesn't count because you'll probably find Turkish Airlines.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. The Turkish Airlines also cheap, by the way, for those who want to travel.
Correct. It's one of the few airlines which covers a lot of routes across the world.
Yes. Agreed. All right. So that is your international bit. And on little public demand here, could you also elaborate, apart from the Meghalayas that we've talked about and a couple other places, in India, what are the places that one should explore?
Okay, so once things probably normalize in Kashmir, Kashmir is a fantastic place to go, hands down. It's just something else. Himachal, Sikkim, Uttaranchal, just take off to the mountains. Trust me, the world is envious of us that we have the Himalayas. We can get to the Himalayas whenever fucking we feel like. Right, and you have to see how much people spend just to spend like a 10-day trek in the Himalayas. We literally have to do nothing.
That's so true.
Right, and the people of the mountains are some of the nicest people. Radhika, you would know Dolma Auntie and Kalsang Uncle, right, from the podcast. I did a podcast on my experiences of living in that 1 month in that cottage.
Okay,
and a story from there, and that's where I actually also picked up the word Jiji Visha.
Okay,
which is a sort of Hindi word for having an intense desire to live and continue living.
Jiji Visha.
Jiji Visha. It's
That's
a Hindi
Hindi?
word. It's Hindi,
or
yeah.
Is it Sanskrit?
It's Hindi.
It's Hindi?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate, please?
So it's basically having a very intense desire to live and be happy and be sort of having a zeal to sort of, live this life and experience whatever is around you. It may not have to do anything with travel. You could be having a very intense desire to live in whatever condition you may have. But the fact that you appreciate the gift of life you have and of this world you can see, that's Jiji Visha.
Quite, I don't know, speechless kind of moment for me. I can use this, and if it's okay, I will plagiarize this thought of yours and use it with my clients.
It's not my word. By all means, use Jiji Visha.
Jiji Visha.
You probably want to then listen to the episode. That way I will improve my listener count by one.
You just give me a list of the episodes I have to listen to. One is definitely the Whirling Dervish. And then this one, Jiji Visha.
Actually, there are only 6 out by now, so you can listen to all of them.
Yeah, well, I heard one of yours on Cyrus, and I have to say that
that's a different
brilliant.
kind of episode. Trust me, that is not what I normally write for my content.
Right. You mentioned Kashmir. What's the best part about Kashmir for you? I've been to Kashmir thrice in my life.
Okay.
And that's the top of the list, no matter what you see in the world.
Yeah. So I've seen very small glimpses of Kashmir. And I think the paradise on earth is very justified as a name.
It is, right? It really is so beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And I mean, yeah. And I mean, anything really, trust me, in the Himalayas you go. And the people, I'm telling you, the people are so nice in the mountains. It's not even funny how nice they are. Right? And it's not that they don't have problems in life, but they're just so nice through and through.
And they're so warm.
They're so warm,
hospitable.
Apart from that, I think a lot of other places, I will of course not talk about Rajasthan because everyone knows Rajasthan is a great place to go, so that doesn't make sense. But maybe you have to start also looking at entire Northeast.
Yeah.
Entire of Northeast.
All of it.
There is not one state I don't find interesting to go to. Right? Coming to even something like MP is a very interesting state to go to. You go to places like Orcha, go to the national parks, and it's a very interesting sort of space and has a very interesting history as well. From what I've heard, even Orissa is a very interesting place to go. I have not been there myself, but it's a fairly unique sort of a take on things. Kerala, definitely, no doubt about it. I've been to Wayanad and had a fantastic time going there. Then coming to even Maharashtra,
Yeah.
The Western Ghats in the monsoons, oh my God, so beautiful.
You can't miss it.
You can't miss
You have to do
correct.
Western Ghats once in the monsoons.
Once in the monsoons. And it is gorgeous, right? And even, for example, going to Satara, the Valley of Flowers, here in Maharashtra, this is a great place to go. I think every state has something very unique to offer. Run of Kutch in Gujarat, yes, definitely a place you should be going to see the wild salt flats, because the other closest place to see the salt flats would be in South America, which is very far and very expensive. But when you can take a train from Bombay and go to Bhuj and go there to Kutch, it's much cheaper to do.
Well, why not?
Why not, right? Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I think Karnataka. I've not seen much of Andhra, to be very honest, so I don't know much about Andhra.
Okay.
But yeah, I think pretty
Andhra,
much.
I've done a bit of Andhra.
I think I've not done anything
Odisha.
beyond Hyderabad, so I don't know much. Oh, Vizag is a nice, beautiful, sweet city.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think pretty much. Have you got a good list, Radhika?
Yeah.
Sorted.
South also has all Coorg, Kunur.
Oh, yes.
Uti,
the hill stations of South India.
Kodai. Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful places.
Beautiful. And those spontaneous trips happen. So those ghats, there was a bison almost attacked us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were going from Uti to Kodai. And the hotel in Kodai was so bad, we were like, let's go back. But then there'll be another bison on the ghat, so forget about it. So, yeah, that was one. But yeah, South India has a lot of beautiful places.
Absolutely.
I think all of India has a lot of beautiful places. Yeah, if you just have to sit down and think about what you want to see. What is that one tip you would give to somebody who's going to start traveling, specifically solo traveling?
I think one tip I would give to them is, if you're apprehensive about being by yourself, try and go to a place where you have a friend. Right? Stay at your friend's place, but make sure you only come there to just sleep.
Yeah.
Right? So throughout the day, you're actually by yourself. And if you genuinely feel stressed out, or at some point you feel unsafe or you panic for something, you always have a friend to go to. Right? And
that's a very good tip, actually.
Yeah,
very helpful.
So because you always have mentally a comfort or safe zone to go to back.
Right.
I think that makes a huge difference. And if you really feel stuck, you can just call your friend and your friend can get you.
That's a great idea. That's wonderful. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll catch you on the other side of this break.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, quick reminder, please do fill out our survey. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. It's a listener survey. We're trying to understand more about who's listening to our stuff, what kind of things you would like to see from us in the future, what you have been seeing so far, what you think of it, what shows you like, all kinds of different stuff. Also who you are, right? So, all kinds of different stuff. Just please do come in and fill it out. It would be really helpful. That's ivmpodcast.com/survey. I want to thank our sponsors this week, Cambly, Intel, and Storytel. Remember, sponsors are what make this stuff possible. So if you enjoy the content, please do thank our sponsors. We have 2 new shows releasing this week. Lakshmi Krishnan, better known as Literary Chills on Twitter, talks to agents of literary culture on her show Litnama. She plunges deep into new genres of literature born in the digital era as she talks to the performers, storytellers, bloggers, poets, and writers. New episodes are out every Tuesday from 10th December. The Traveling Professor's Diary is hosted by Siddharth Deshmukh. It's a show about a curious human being with an eagerness for travel and observation. He visits colleges such as MICA, SP Jain, Symbiosis, Flame, Upgrad, Talent Age, and spreads the digital gospel of design, marketing, and business transformation. Episodes are out every Tuesday and Thursday starting 10th of December. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by the man who writes the famous Amul hoardings, Manish Javeri. He talks about his life in advertising and bonds with Cyrus over their love of Bappi Lahiri. On Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Janice and Anirudh deep dive into Season 2 of Jack Ryan. They discuss how it measures up with other globe-trotting spy shows. On The Origin of Things, Chuck narrates a story about the achievements, awards, and the rules that were changed by a particular bank. On Tapri Tales, meet the character Samira, who talks about Azadi Ka Room, woven by our storyteller Madhuri. What is Azadi Ka Room and can we find it today? Samira will tell you. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik is joined by co-founders of the News Minute, Dhanya Rajendra and Vignesh Velor. Together they talk about the initial days of the News Minute and give their viewpoints of how news is provided in India. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Chief Digital Officer at Hansa Equity, Nishad Ramachandran. They talk about how marketing is converging around a digital customer hub. On Golgappa, Trupti is joined by Anish Vyavhare, a spoken word poet who talks about his love for poetry and recites some poems about food. The Habit Coach completes 1 year of great habits. Ashton is joined by Urmi Kothari, the host of the Kinetic Living podcast. They talk about her fitness journey and her philosophy behind exercising. And with that, let's get on with your show.
Welcome back to the Empowering series with me, Zarina, and I'm still in conversation with Utsav. We're talking plenty about travels, and Utsav has given us a lot of information, tips on budget traveling, right? India, international, some of his favorite places, his recommendations. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, we can actually start a little travel and tourism organization among the four of us right now. And literally tell people, okay, we'll book your tickets, we will do this for you, create your itinerary. Yeah. It's not a bad idea. Utsav, you should think about it.
No, actually, no. I don't want to get into people's travel plans and tell them कि तुम यहाँ जाओ, like नहीं हमको तो ये करना है, हम like जो करना है करो फिर.
Yeah, there's a cliche, na, how it goes when you're going as a tourist. There's a difference between being a tourist and a traveler.
No, I don't agree to the definition actually.
Yeah, no, I'm asking you. I don't know.
Okay. I know because a lot of people ask me this question. I don't think there's a difference between a tourist and a traveler for the simple reason that I do not have a right to look down upon someone else's style of travel. If someone wants everything to be taken care of by a tour group, well, it's their style of travel. I personally would not do it because I find it not fulfilling myself. But for someone, it could be.
Yeah.
Right? And as I said, it makes you more empathetic, right? Who am I to sit and judge कि ये सही है या गलत है?
गलत है, right.
मैं कौन सी authority हूँ? Yeah, that's why I don't think there's a difference between a tourist. There shouldn't be a difference between a tourist and a traveler.
Quite intense, that thought is. I've never thought of them as different, but I've always felt that somewhere when we are traveling by ourselves, like you do, okay, the scope of understanding a place to its core is very different. From,
that is true. That is true.
From just going around seeing places of interest or just visiting the place because you want to visit it and just look at it a little superficially, then you're not really getting to the core of the place. Maybe that part, that part for me is different there, but otherwise completely with you. Like I said, intense thought. Okay, I have just come across this word, slow traveling, and I have no idea about it. So can you please educate me?
So slow travel is the idea of spending more time at a place, immersing yourself in the culture, the stories, and the people, and trying to understand how this place became what it is today. Okay, and why I recommend slow travel to people is simply because, you know, as your film of memory decays, and that's what I talk about in my podcast as well.
Okay.
If you try and rush through places and go through very quickly, you will not remember them in the long run.
Right.
Because what happens is they just become like, you have these snippets of, you know, place, like you go through 6 countries in 15 days, you will just remember snippet of country, a snippet of country, a snippet of country, see, and that's it.
Yeah.
However, the true benefit or the true joy of a memory is that it can give you infinite joy by retelling that memory again and again. Right? So when we catch up with friends or with family after a long time, sooner or later our conversation descends into times we had a good time, times we had fun.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot have a story if you have not stayed in a place long enough. Right? Because the story needs time to develop.
Sure.
Right? Now, if you spent, let's say, 2 days in Paris, you were so stressed out about seeing everything that there is no story left there.
Right, true.
At the best, you will say, I went to the Eiffel Tower, then I went to the Museum of Modern Art, then I went to Louvre, then I went to the Shakespeare Cafe, library, and I went out. That's not a story.
Yes.
That's a checklist of places you went to. So, what slow travel allows you to do is get joy out of your travel even when it's over. You can keep revisiting it. Right, for example, the bus journey you talked about with your husband. Yeah. Right? You guys are going to talk till you guys die, baby.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a great memory because you did not just take a flight to Goa. You never remember a flight to Goa. You might have gone to Goa 3 times and taken flights.
Of course.
Do you remember anything about it? No.
Yeah.
You would have taken so many flights in life, right? But the fact that journey, and you know, I'm sure it was not the most comfortable journey maybe. There will be some ups and downs. But those become woven into your stories.
Yes.
And, you know, you might have done something hilarious. Your husband might have done something stupid. And, you know, you might have seen someone doing something hilarious or stupid. And that remains a memory with you.
That's so true, yeah.
Right? And once you start playing that back over years, it gives you joy. Because you can't always be happy with the present. But you can always look back at the past, go back into nostalgia and be happy.
Right. Wow. So I think it does help you create this nostalgic space.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're traveling, maybe a part of your soul just takes all these little memories and puts it away for you to reminisce whenever you need. And whenever you're storytelling, right? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Which is your favorite memory from travel, apart from the one you mentioned? You mentioned the 7-kilometer drop that you got.
Yeah.
In Bosnia.
So, there's so many to choose from, but okay. So this happened in my sabbatical 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
I was in Indonesia going to one of those hikes to the volcanoes. So you're supposed to start that about 3:30 in the morning so that you can be at the volcano at sunrise.
All right.
It's a gorgeous sunrise. So this is Mount Bromo, okay, in Indonesia. And I was by myself. So I went that point and started walking. So I just met a few people there who were also walking.
Okay.
And given how amazing I am at directions, I was like, इनके पीछे चलते हैं, क्योंकि मुझे तो नहीं पता है कहाँ जाना है, right? And I kept walking with them, and we started talking, and we got along well. Mm-hmm. And these guys did not have a plan, but because I was only there for a week, I had a plan. So we finished that place. Then we went to the next mountain together and hiked that mountain. Mm-hmm. And then we sort of went back. I went back to India. They continued traveling. They went back eventually to Germany.
Okay.
And last year when I took a sabbatical and I got my visa, I actually went to their place and stayed there with them for 3 days.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, and they were so nice and so hospitable, and they took me around in Stuttgart. Mm-hmm. And Maury and Franzi, if you will listen to this because I'm going to send you the link. So I had a fantastic time with you guys, and I'm hoping to see them again soon. And these kinds of friendships are, you would never see them happen if you are never going to step out of your home, never going to step out of your comfort zone, never going to go an effort to talk to people who are unlike you.
Yes.
But I was so thrilled to go see them, and they were so excited, and I actually went, I stayed at their place, I cooked Indian food for them, they called 2 of their friends, and they loved Indian food, so I made a whole meal for them.
That's so delightful.
Yeah, and we were just all sitting and eating, and I was teaching them how to eat with hands, and of course, they were not doing very well, because it's not sort of native to them, right? And it's been one of my fondest memories, The same thing happened, I hosted an Argentine guy on couchsurfing in China when I was living in China. And when I went to Argentina, I stayed at his place for 3 days, and him and his partner also sort of, really took care of me. And think about it, we don't know anything about each other, but we so implicitly trusted each other, right?
That's actually true, because, in a world where everybody is so distrustful, to be able to hold that kind of trust where you can live with somebody just randomly, met somebody, strangers becoming friends, and then offering their home, that's very nice.
And I think we all need to shed that cynicism we have in ourselves.
Right.
So while I'm not asking you to be illogical or stupid, but don't be cynical about everything. Like, life gives us a lot of reasons to be cynical, but doesn't mean sort of we let it cloud our worldview completely.
True. Well, so on that note, since you've left us with your travel talks and some lovely places that you've lived with, friends that you've made, I'd like to ask you, what is it that empowers you the most, Utsav?
I think I come from a household which was a single-parent household. My father passed away when I was very young. And one thing which sort of was very drilled in my head very early, I don't know whether it was done consciously by my mom or I picked it along the way, is that if you persevere, you can pretty much achieve anything. I think that's very empowering for the fact that, of course, I'm saying that, you have to be not coming from difficult conditions. Of course, I'm not going to discount that some people have it very, very difficult throughout life.
Right.
But I'm saying that if you have been fortunate enough not to have any major issues in life, nothing is outside your grasp, right? If you just persevere, you have to just be at it every single time you are going to sit down. Like, people ask me that, don't you get like writer's block or podcaster's block? I'm like, wo sab na acha hai. Tum 15 minute baitho and you focus, you will be able to write. Right? You may not love the first draft you write, sure, but you cannot edit a blank page, right? Correct. You have to write something and then you can edit it, right? But if you look at all the most accomplished artists, writers, filmmakers, musicians, it's not that everything they churn out is brilliant, but the process of churning out every single day makes you better at your craft. And that applies to anything you do. True. And to me, that is empowering because it is something which is under my control.
Excellent. And since you are also empowered, I want to ask you one more thing, which I secretly know about you.
What has Radhika been telling you?
Your love for biryani.
Oh, yes.
I want to
yes.
just elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah.
And also about your book. So these are the two other aspects of you that I just want to touch
I'm
upon.
wondering, how long has this episode run by now?
It doesn't matter. You can still talk about biryani.
Oh, okay. So, yes. So I grew up as vegetarian.
Right.
I come from a vegetarian family. And I converted
into a non-vegetarian.
Okay. And to me, I think biryani is a reflection of everything I love about travel. It's like an amalgamation of cultures because the biryani itself has evolved over time, right? And how Awadh has its own, Calcutta has its own, Hyderabad has its own, right? And across the Central Asia, there's a pulao which morphed into the biryani and so on. And the other thing which I love about it is that it is, I consider it the pinnacle of, in some way, culinary achievement. Because a biryani can be as simple or can be very, very complex.
That's so true.
Right?
For somebody who knows how to cook the biryani.
Yeah, correct. Which is not me. By the way, it's Zarina, in case you were wondering. Right? So, I think that's where I fell in love with the whole idea of biryani. And of course, it tastes amazing. And the idea is it is a meal in itself, right?
Yes.
You can eat a biryani without salan, without raita. You can just eat a biryani by itself also.
True.
You don't need anything to accompany it. Right? And I think it's what makes it practical yet philosophically beautiful for me.
Oh my God, I've never heard something so poetic about a biryani in my life. Probably heard about other things, but a biryani, practical and philosophical, that is wow. Anyway, so also your book. You didn't mention your book.
Yeah, so the reason I keep mentioning my book is a subtle way to push me to edit it properly.
Okay, great.
So I've written it. I wrote it in my sabbatical a year ago, but I've never gotten down to editing it properly. I keep editing it. I keep losing track. So, I should persevere more there.
All right.
In editing it well and sort of taking it out. But now that I've picked up the podcast, I've sort of put it on the back burner for a while now. But it is, again, it's titled Monastery in a Minefield. And it's at the intersection of travel and emotions. And the fact that, your urban living, your regular living is not going to allow you to experience the entire range of emotions a human being is capable of.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And because I use behavioral sciences and psychology in my work, right? So I also bring in that perspective of what emotions are and how they shape us and how we make decisions. And how they are actually very linked to our identity in many ways. So that's what the book is about. And it's like stories from my travels across the decade.
Wonderful. So basically, just asking about the book has probably motivated you to edit it and make it move faster.
Yes. So it's
Monastery
in a minefield.
In a minefield.
Yeah.
Correct. All right. So we'll keep that in mind.
Yes. So Zarina, I have a question for you. And this largely comes from, doing a lot of work with people, understanding their behavior and teaching students is, I think one of the biggest things which I see is anxiety amongst young people.
Yes.
I think it's probably at a record high in my opinion. I could be completely wrong. You would know better. How does one deal with anxiety on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, because we could become anxious about very, very small things, which are actually not that important. Versus you have genuine anxieties about, what I'm going to do with my life and career and money and relationships and so many things, right? How do you keep some sort of a semblance of balance within yourself when things are not that great around you?
So the word anxiety in general, where does it stem from? It stems from you overthinking and overanalyzing?
Probably.
Yeah, a part of it.
Yeah.
And the other part of it has a kind of chemical or biological reaction in your body where you start palpitating or your heartbeat is faster, so you feel very anxious. So there are two ways of dealing with this. One, how your thinking matters when you're anxious.
Right.
When you're going through this bout of anxiety. Are you a problem solver or a problem creator? Are you thinking the problem? Are you thinking of a solution? That's one aspect of it. So when you're feeling very anxious in a moment, you need to just pause for a moment, take a deep breath and ask yourself, how should I solve this? So when you're switching your mind and your brain to start thinking in a direction of solutions, you're taking yourself away from the problem which is making you anxious.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect, when I'm looking at it from a biological perspective or scientific perspective, it is important to, in a moment when you're feeling anxious, take a few deep breaths. So I usually like this whole technique. We call it 5-10-5.
Okay.
I call it 5-10-5. Yogis do this at 16, 32, 16 counts, wherein you breathe in for 5 counts, you hold your breath for 10, and then you breathe out slowly for another 5 counts.
Okay.
So it is a breathing technique which helps you to calm down, recoup and regather your thoughts and rejuvenate your mind instantly. Because if you see a dog, how long is a dog's life?
10 years, 12 years maybe.
Have you seen a dog breathe? It's panting. Which is the animal which lives the longest?
Tortoise maybe? Yeah.
Why? Because the breathing cycle is about 2 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I never had that perspective. That's fantastic.
So if you actually just keep in mind that breathing correctly in a moment of anxiety, when you're feeling that bout, people call it a panic attack, there's palpitation. So these are things that are chemically taking place in your body. There are reactions. So help your body to relax and help your mind to find the solution instead of the problem. And the combination of this, a good marriage between these two, helps you to deal with anxiety better.
Am I allowed to ask you one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So my question is that most of our listeners would be living in urban India, right?
Right.
Urban settings. How do you find peace and quiet when you're living in a noisy city? Like, how do you make it a part of your everyday life?
How do you define peace and quiet? First, it depends on that. For me, peace and quiet has nothing to do with the noise in the city. It has to do with a mental stability and a way of dealing with the noise in the city.
Right.
So you can't change the traffic conditions.
Absolutely.
You need to change the timing of how you travel, so you commute, so that you are not stuck in that traffic.
Okay.
And so when does the chaos affect you? When you're part of it. When you can distance yourself from the chaos by managing your time better, by giving yourself priority when you need to, by finding small stress busters, then you don't need to look and find this peace and quiet within your surroundings. You've got to start within yourself. So maybe the 5-10-5 helps, and things like that.
Okay.
Reading, traveling, and food, of course.
Of course.
So let's, thanks, I love those questions. Such nice questions you asked me. All right, so let's come to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Utsav, for being on the
Thank you so much for having me, Zarina. I mean, I never thought I would speak with someone who, from your background and your skills, actually on a podcast. And you interviewing me rather than me interviewing you, I think that would have felt more relevant to me.
Yeah, well, you still have a podcast. I can come on in.
It's a narrative podcast. I actually can't get you on that.
Fine. No, I'm just saying that this is the entire concept. It's unique.
Right.
And at the same time, the most important aspect is that you've been extremely empowering. So thank you so much for all the value that you've added in our episode today, Utsav.
Thank you, Zarina.
And on that note, to our listeners, so you must remember that travel has the ability to gather unfathomable memories, like Utsav mentioned. And it also enhances your ability to adjust and adapt. Most of the travels that you make will make you realize how little you are in the speck of this universe. So keep yourself grounded. Go pack your bags and go around the world. It is your oyster. Most of all, travel safe and stay empowered. Thank you, guys. If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often. Over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav, and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel, one story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
How many times have you caught yourself Googling stuff on health and wondering if it's the right information? How many times have you heard different health experts give opposing views, which has only left you confused? There are rising cases of cancer, heart, diabetes, stress, and autoimmune diseases. Meet the patients and the experts who paved the path of true healing. Join me, Rachna Chachi, cancer nutrition coach and nutritional therapist on Heal and Hearty. I take you through my own journey of recovery from an incurable disease and the journey of so many others who healed only via nutrition and holistic healing. Find the answers you seek for what's good for your health and what's good for your soul. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. Don't forget your date with good health.